All the characters in the story are over 18 years old. A student's life is hectic in the summer. Every day passes for a serious struggle between necessity and laziness. At the age of 21, I want to enjoy the warmth of a short summer and not languish in stuffy classrooms and classrooms under the monotonous voice of a lecturer. The third year of study was coming to an end, almost no different from the first two. But there was still one serious difference. The internship in the specialty, which takes place annually in the summer, took place during the school year. This created a significant burden on weekdays, but provided me with a quiet summer in the future. My first free summer in the last 5 years. As a child, we spent almost every summer in the village. For us children, there were no boundaries, no translation difficulties. As a rule, we went to the village with the whole family: Dad, Mom, me, and my younger brother. Often, Dad, who was busy with work, or Mom could not go with us, and then we were sent to the village to our paternal aunt. My father had a house there, which his sister looked after during our absence. It's scary to think, but I haven't been there for over 6 years. Then exams at school, then entrance exams, then summer practice. 6 years without a full summer. 6 years without a summer in the village, so familiar and warm. My brother, on the contrary, even in the most difficult times, certainly went to the village in the summer, from where he returned closer to September tanned and happy. And now he was already basking in the warm southern sun while I was closing the last exam. The trip took only 2 days, and everything went without problems. My uncle, my aunt's husband, met me at the station, helped me carry my suitcase, and told me the latest important news of the village in recent years that I had missed all the way home. And the village has hardly changed. In some places a new fence, new colors, cars, but everything is still native and familiar. My brother met me at the gate. He always knew how to find adventures for himself. His parents couldn't go on vacation this time either, so his aunt looked after him. But can you keep an eye on him? What's wrong with your arms and stomach? I asked my brother, unpacking my suitcase in my room. We climbed trees, he replied. A tree in someone else's garden? The fruits are still green. Just climbing. I see. My aunt probably doesn't even know. I'm not small anymore. I see it. My brother had really grown up by the age of 16. At my height of 164 centimeters, he was a whole head taller and continued to grow. Lean and slightly thin, with blonde hair and eyebrows that faded even more in the sun, creating a constant contrast on tanned skin. Just like my brother, I inherited big gray eyes and blonde hair from my father, which I cut slightly shorter than my shoulders. My mother rewarded me with her lip shape, fragile physique, and fair skin, which was extremely poorly tanned, leaving redness and burns. I used this feature as an official reason to explain why I don't wear anything short. I said it out loud so many times that I began to partly believe in its truthfulness, which hid a banal shyness. Another unofficial reason was my shameful weakness and curiosity, which no one knew about. I hid them even about myself, waging an internal struggle of desires and morals. The ironclad argument of my desires was the call of nature. In another corner of the ring was the usual morality, brought up by society and parents since childhood. It's shameful, they urged. And I agreed with them. But curiosity and desire did not disappear anywhere. I suffer from it day by day. The first thing we did upon my arrival was to visit our relatives. My aunt could chat for hours about everything vital, accompanying the stories with active gestures. My uncle stopped to make toasts to my arrival and health. And only my brother sat with a drooping face, looking out the window and chewing the steering wheel without enthusiasm. And how's your studies going? My aunt persisted. Good. It was hard at first. Dad says you're a biologist. Yes, a microbiologist. Do you study animals? Various organisms. An excellent student, perhaps? I see that she is an excellent student. I've always been smart. Well done. Thank you. Do you have a young man? I was a little embarrassed. No. Why is that? You're a smart and beautiful girl. A little skinny, but it's fixable, right? She nudged her husband. Why are you attached to her? My uncle replied. Oh, come on. What's there to be embarrassed about? She nodded in my direction. Are you completely stupid or something? What are you talking about? She waved her hand at him. She's not little anymore. She'll figure it out on her own, Uncle snapped. Let's drink to the arrival. Once again, my aunt raised her eyebrows sarcastically. You're a fool, he muttered kindly in response and knocked over the glass. The evening came quickly, and I, tired from the road, did not even have time to put my head on the pillow as I fell asleep. I woke up only at dawn. Such an old and familiar silence was broken by the occasional crowing of the neighborhood roosters. A slight coolness streamed from the slightly open window, filling the room with the morning smells of dew and grass. I was ready to enjoy it endlessly, so it took an effort to finally get up. My brother was still asleep. I didn't hear how or when he came home. I must have been out with friends until late at night. I quietly closed his door and went into the kitchen, where I began to prepare breakfast. He did not wake up until near noon. I have already managed not only to put my things away, but also to do a little cleaning in our home, which he managed to bring into a complete mess in 3 weeks. I would like to say a special thank you for the mountain of dishes with dried pieces of food on it, which was left for my arrival. I was also a little surprised by the collection of dirty clothes, in which there were both torn and dirty t-shirts. After lunch, I decided to reward myself and finally relax and loaf around. I pulled a cot out of the closet and climbed into it with an ebook. I was interrupted from Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude by someone's brazen hail of "Hey." "Hey," he repeated, "hi." I put the book away and turned towards the noise. There was a young, short, but broad-shouldered guy my age standing outside the gate. "Hi," I replied, frantically trying to remember if we knew each other. "It's me." It was thrown as if I should have understood everything right away. My silence must have been prolonged. And then it dawned on me. This is a local bully who got into all the fights and teased the guys. The last time I saw him, he was much smaller. Over the past 6 years, he has grown up and built up muscles, turning into a man. Not being particularly handsome, he took on arrogance and self-confidence. Regarding this as a friendly gesture, he leaned against the fence and began to look at me. "How many years have passed?" He continued with satisfaction. 6, I replied laconically. "How long have you been here?" "For the whole summer." "That's good," he breathed. "What are you doing tonight?" I looked at him with some apprehension. I was unaccustomed to such directness and simplicity of speech. I was lost. "I don't know yet." "Come to the river by the bridge." He suggested it as if all the cream of society were gathering there. "All our people will be there. You'll see everyone." "Thanks, I'll think about it." "Don't think about it, but come," he smiled. "Okay, I'll think about it." "I'll be waiting," he said. His head and shoulders followed the fence and disappeared around the corner of the house, leaving me in a kind of confusion. During this time, I managed to weigh his offer several times, but I did not come to anything. Before I could get back to reading, a girly voice rang out behind me. What did he want? I turned around and saw my cousin, the daughter of my uncle and aunt. There were 2 of them in the family, but she was always missing somewhere. "Hello," I replied briefly. "Did you call under the bridge?" "What is it?" she asked with some kind of trick. "He called me. He invites all the girls there." "I see." The conversation was getting uncomfortable, so I wanted to finish it as soon as possible. "You can go if you want. But it's better to warn you right away." "About what?" "Mishka has a weakness for something." This formulation of the proposal implied that I would be interested and ask. But I really didn't want to play along with her, so I chose the most neutral phrase. "We all have weaknesses," I said boringly, realizing that it was true. Her face frowned slightly. She had expected otherwise. "He has more than simple weaknesses. He's completely obsessed." "That's how it is," I drawled just as boringly and reached for the book. "Anyway, I warned you," she said and left. Another incomprehensible meeting, leaving a cloud of emotions without any meaning. I am not used to frequent communication, preferring solitude. I didn't understand the bouts of jealousy, as well as this guy's interest in me. My comfort zone is far from all of this, so I went back to reading, which was relaxing. Towards evening, everything matured by itself. The eldest of the 2 cousins dropped by to visit us and invited me to come with her. To the bridge, of course. She had to put in a lot of effort to persuade me to go. She promised to keep an eye on me. The evening passed quietly. I've seen enough of these parties over the past 3 years. The people and the place were different, but the mood was always the same. Alcohol and guitar, dim light of smartphones, mumbling and laughter of people. I sat by the campfire, feeling the bitterness of smoke and ash soak into my clothes. Conversations, as usual, took place about everything and nothing at the same time. If at first I still participated in them as an object of curious glances, then I disappeared into the cool summer air, becoming invisible. I was about to leave when the guy squatted down next to me. "Hello," he whispered. "Hi," I whispered back. "You came anyway." "Yeah. Aren't you cold?" "A little bit." I really started to chill from a long and motionless pose. "Come on," he took my hand and pulled me along insistently. His head was empty. I followed him under the bridge. The noise of the merry company was muffled here, but it echoed slightly. It was dark, but he walked confidently. He sat me down on something soft, which I recognized as an old blanket. I didn't even want to think about how many animals there might be in it. "It will be warmer this way." My jacket fell on my shoulders. "Thank you, I really felt warmer." "Here you go." "I don't see anything." I almost took what he had in his hand by touch. A plastic cup. I held it up to my face and sniffed it. I didn't dare try it. "Yes, there's only a drop to keep warm." "Have you never had a drink?" "Why, saw." I was offended and took a sip. The heat quickly spread throughout the esophagus. If there was a drop, it was Coca-Cola. I coughed. "In small sips," he said sententiously. I took another small sip, feeling myself getting warmer. "And you've become prettier," he suddenly changed the subject. "It makes me feel awkward at times like this." "Thanks. You've matured too." "You're not bullying anymore?" "No, why? I've been working since I was 16. I don't have time to be a bully." "Are you studying?" "Yes." "For whom?" "Microbiology." "Will you be a scientist?" he remarked cheerfully. "I'm still studying, and then we'll see." I sniffed and finished the rest of the cocktail, wincing at its bitterness. A guitar was playing awkwardly, and insects were chirping. "Are you warm?" "A little," I said. The alcohol was really warming, even though it hadn't managed to get to my head yet. "Then you can have a little more, so that you definitely don't freeze." I handed him a cup into the darkness. I still couldn't see anything in the dark, so it was a mystery to me how he saw where to pour his miracle cocktail. "Here you go," he said again. But I had already jumped up from the dirty blanket and walked away from the bridge, hoping not to stumble in the dark. Burning with shame, I did not notice how I came out to the road, along which I had already reached home. I reproached myself again for my naivety. For this simplicity and trustfulness. The house was empty, my brother hadn't come yet. The cool air and the walk had a positive effect on my well-being, removing worries and jitters. I went to my room and lay down on the bed. It was late, and I was pretty tired, and despite the alcohol in my blood, I couldn't sleep. I spent the next few days at home practically without leaving. First of all, I avoided the guy who used to walk past our house every day. During this time, I managed to carry out general cleaning several times, which, although it occupied me with business, was quite annoying for both me and my brother. But I couldn't hide forever. It was necessary to replenish the supply of provisions, but sending my brother shopping was fraught with a second trip to the store for the right purchases. But he couldn't be left idle either. Laziness is the worst teacher. That's why I assigned him to clean the yard. Let him wave a broom in the fresh air. I looked around all the way to the store. It seemed to me that the whole village already knew about the incident under the bridge and was now looking at me accusingly. I tried to calm myself down by filling my mind with a shopping list. I was lucky, and my foraging trip was uneventful. However, as I approached the house, I noticed a familiar squat silhouette. A nightmare. I won't make it to the gate, and I'll be clearly visible in the middle of the street. Not expecting such a rush from herself, she jumped over the fence with the package, almost tearing it. Thoughts swarmed in my head, driven by panic. I can't run home, and the closest shelter is a small outdoor storage room for garden tools, near which my brother was busy with a sleepy fly. Wasting no time, I jumped up to the pantry, dropped the bag, and began to push my brother inside. It was not enough for him to answer this guy's questions. He started to resist out of surprise, but I growled at him in a muffled voice and pushed him back into the pantry, and then climbed in myself and quickly closed the door. It remains to lie low and wait it out. It was cramped and stuffy, smelled of rust and dry grass. I tried to see at least something through the gap in the boards, but they did not give the right view. "What's going on?" he choked out. "Quiet," I whispered. I tried to stand on my toes again, but I couldn't reach it just a little bit. The roof of the house was visible, but there was not enough height to the fence. I couldn't think of anything better to start bouncing a little, awkwardly, on tiptoe, pushing and leaning. But it paid off. I saw the guy's puzzled face sticking out over the fence. He was looking for something. In my jumps, I stepped on my brother's feet several times and touched him with my elbow, but he endured meekly. There were tools sticking out from all sides, which were easy to get hurt on. A few scratches were nothing compared to the cuttings from shovels and rakes that stuck out in all directions. After my short jumps, one of them began to rest against my back, and I whispered to my brother to quietly correct it without attracting attention. But in response, I heard an indignant grumble about the closeness in the pantry. I don't know how long these hide-and-seek games lasted, but we managed to sweat a lot. But it was rewarded for us. The guy, saddened, went about his business, thereby releasing us into the wild. "That's it, you can go out," I commanded and fell out. "Everything is numb," my brother complained in response. "Who are you hiding from?" "From no one." "Why didn't you clean the yard?" I decided to change the subject. "I didn't make it." "What were you doing that you didn't have time to do?" "I managed to go to the store." She pointed at the bag of scattered groceries. "Why are you bothering?" "If you want a clean yard, clean it yourself," he said with a reddened face and went into the house, slamming the door loudly. "You're crazy," I summarized loudly. "Who's crazy?" It was heard from behind. I jumped in surprise. "Is that a brother?" The voice continued. "Are you swearing?" "No, we're not fighting," I said, turning around. "Are you offended?" He smiled. "Why would I be offended?" "Well, I'm sorry, I didn't think. I just liked you." I noticed. The coldness of my phrases could freeze continents. "Don't get mad," he continued, matter of factly. "I didn't mean to offend you." "Fool, I know. I barely graduated from high school, let alone manners." His voice sounded soft and calm, mesmerizing with its steadfastness. I was surprised to find myself thinking that I was not angry at him at all, but only playing the role of angry. "Okay," I asked soothingly. "Aren't you angry?" "I'm not angry. How can I make it up to you?" "No way," I replied distantly. "It's best to forget about it." "Got it," he said shortly. We stood and looked at each other for a few seconds. The blood was pounding in his temples, overriding all other noises from the outside. "Can we go for a walk tonight?" he suddenly suggested. I continued to stand there and pretend to think about it, even though I had already decided everything a long time ago. "Good," I finally said. "Fine," he smiled. "Then I'll pick you up at 7, okay?" "Okay. See you then." My interlocutor enthusiastically gave out and, waving his hand, began to go about his business. "That's what's going on. What's wrong with you? 5 minutes ago you hated him or thought you hated him, and now you've agreed to a date. And was it worth bothering yourself for a few days over a trifle?" "Well, that's a fool, honestly." The day dragged on for a long and tedious time, but eventually gave way to a long-awaited evening. And the closer I got to the appointed time, the more nervous I became, although I couldn't find any reason. To keep myself busy, I cooked dinner and gave instructions to my brother, which, of course, he would not follow. We both pretended to believe it and went about our business. I spent an hour thinking about what to wear. How can you spend so much time choosing from the meager number of things you have taken on vacation? It was exhausting. Having dealt with all the cases and refreshed myself, I dressed up and waited. The guy came half an hour earlier, for which I mentally thanked him, as the wait was extremely exhausting. And why am I so nervous? Do I like him that much? That's nonsense. Pull yourself together. The evening turned out to be wonderful and easy. We walked in the semi-darkness and chatted about all sorts of trifles. Most of the time, we remembered our childhood in this village and also shared our impressions of the last 6 years. There was a faint scent of cologne and fresh sweat coming from him, which didn't bother him at all. We crossed the stream over the bridge. A nimble streamlet murmured at his feet, and a branching willow tree spread above his head, creating a cozy corner of nature. Something was waking up in me. Something hot, something smoldering inside. His breathing quickened, his heart began to beat wildly, making everything else fade. And when he called me to his place, I could no longer refuse. We literally stumbled into the house, dropping a chair and some things. He assured me that it was nothing, because we were the only ones at home. But I didn't care anymore, because I couldn't think of anything but his scent. Apparently this was his room. He flipped a switch, and a dim light illuminated the room. In the light? I asked uncertainly, barely holding my breath. "I want to see you." It was said in a tone that brooked no objection. I understood him instantly, but hesitated, habitually restraining my desires. But this time the desire turned out to be much stronger than my prejudices. All this was perceived by me frame by frame, as in slow motion. That calm and confident voice. It's fascinating. There is not a single reason not to believe him. There is not a single reason not to do it. Leaves rustle outside the window, a faint breeze blows, but the impenetrable darkness does not allow you to look particularly into the night, but this is not required. There is no doubt they were rejected long ago. We started making love. I looked out the window at the darkened outlines of my brother, and I couldn't do anything, and I didn't want to do anything anymore. I had nothing left to lose. I could only make it clear that I see him. Shame him. A repeatedly enhanced airy feeling, like before going to bed after a hard day. I lay staring at the ceiling and couldn't think of anything. I just wanted to prolong this feeling of serenity. I looked up at the window, but it showed only the dark night and a lone apple tree dancing in the wind. Maybe it seemed? I was sneaking home. Ubiquitous dogs barked after me from their booths at every yard, accompanying and voicing my path. But the locals got used to it, and not a single mutt could disturb their sleep. I reached our house on shaky legs. She crept quietly across the yard and then into the house. Silence. I stole a glance at my brother's room. He was sleeping. That's nice. She went noiselessly to her room, threw off her things, and collapsed on the bed exhausted. I just wanted to concentrate on my feelings as I fell into a dream. My brother found out about the situation, and when he grew up, he also joined us. Now I have two men at once.